Nolan Ryan was a scary pitcher. You would think it was because he was a skilled pitcher who could throw over 100 miles per hour, but it was because he could also throw hands.
No kidding.
So you want to stay out of that?
I was a little scary when that fight was going on.
From all-out brawls to spiteful vendettas, Nolan Ryan reveals 5 batters he hated the most. Starting our list at number 5 is Rod Carew. Nolan Ryan enjoyed a career spanning over 2 decades. For years, he was a pitcher who thrived on intimidation. Before he would wind up for a throw, he would stare right into the eyes of batters in the hopes of instilling fear in them long before the ball even left his hand. And if that didn't work, he would throw a pitch aimed at the batter. As much as he would concede a walk, this sent a message to opponents in the dugout of what awaited them. But despite all these mind games and trickery, there was somebody who rarely ever fell for Ryan's antics. And because of this, he hated and absolutely despised him. His name was Rod Carew. Whenever the two faced off, it was poetic that they stood opposite each other, because the two of them couldn't be further from each other in terms of their personality. While Nolan Ryan often dictated the tempo and often leaned towards aggression as a means to get his way, Carew wasn't anything like that. Carew relied on an almost supernatural eye and a contact-first approach that drove pitchers insane. His pre-pitch routine was a thing of beauty and torture. He'd adjust his helmet, tap the plate with his bat, and then settle into a crouched, almost horizontal stance. His bat held parallel to the ground. It was a stance that screamed, "I'm ready for anything you can throw at me." And for Ryan, that was a challenge he couldn't stand. But here's the funny thing, Rod Carew wasn't always this fearless batter ready to face Nolan Ryan on his best days. He had studied to marksman. Early in his career, Nolan Ryan had struck Carew out a total of 29 times, and at first it seemed as if the young Angels star was one of many victims of Ryan, but things didn't stay that way. Carew tried a different approach to counter Nolan's fastballs until he had hit jackpot with the low horizontal stance. What's worse than a good batter discrediting you with his hitting ability is a batter who has deciphered you, turned your strength into a weakness, and basically made it clear that he wasn't afraid of you. And that's what really made Nolan Ryan mad. And the numbers only justified why Ryan hated him. Carew batted a defiant .306 in his career against Nolan Ryan. While others were simply trying to make contact, Carew was lacing 19 hits, including a home run, 2 triples, and a double. He drew 11 walks and was content to strike out just 15 times, a remarkably low number against a pitcher who famously led the league in strikeouts. The rivalry, however, was strictly a regular season affair. Neither the Minnesota Twins, where Carew spent the bulk of his career, nor the opposite, California Angels, Ryan's team for much of the 70s, ever made it to the playoffs at the same time during their head-to-head encounters. The great showdown never happened on the biggest stage. The regular season face-offs were already tense. A playoff match might have had the ballpark looking like the Wild West. But this next player played in the West when things between him and Nolan Ryan got wild. Player number 4, Dave Winfield. Nolan Ryan was quite a handful for batters to face. If you exuded confidence, he would try to intimidate you. If you showed any signs of weakness, he would prey on that and make sure he embarrassed you. It was like you couldn't win against Nolan Ryan, except you stood your ground and came out on top. You could argue that Nolan Ryan had a bit of arrogance and cockiness to him, because when people dished him the disrespect he was serving, he'd turn hateful real quick, and nobody knows this better than former San Diego player Dave Winfield. Before this fateful encounter, Dave Winfield was a force of nature in his own right. Standing at over 6.5 feet with a menacing black bat, he was a powerful slugger with one of the most lethal throwing arms in the history of the game. He had been drafted in 3 different pro sports, baseball, basketball, and football. His athleticism was the stuff of legends. Everybody wanted to play with him, but never against him. He went straight from college to the big leagues, skipping the minor league entirely. This was a rare feat that spoke volumes about his raw talent. In 1979, the year before the incident, he had a breakout season for the San Diego Padres, hitting 34 home runs and driving in 118 runs in a season where his team as a whole struggled to score. He was a superstar on the rise, a player who commanded respect and feared no one, and definitely not Nolan Ryan. So when the two finally faced each other, it was bound to be a show, just not the type baseball fans pay tickets for. On the 4th of August, 1980, The Houston Astros were playing the San Diego Padres at the Astrodome. On the mound for the Astros is Nolan Ryan, a pitcher with a history of throwing inside, of brushing back hitters who get too comfortable. And at the plate, standing tall and unafraid, is Dave Winfield. Ryan repeatedly brushes Winfield back with inside pitches. He was playing mind games, trying to get in Winfield's head. Nolan Ryan hated seeing players think they were all that when he stood on the mound. He felt that when he stood in the center of the diamond, he controlled things and no one else. He needed Winfield to show signs of vulnerability. He needed Winfield to know that he may have been on his home turf, but this wasn't his game to win. On a third inside pitch, Ryan's fastball came whizzing toward Winfield, forcing him to hit the dirt once more. But this time, Winfield had had enough. He didn't hesitate. Winfield dropped his bat and charged the mound with a fury and conviction that few had ever shown against the great Nolan Ryan. The Padres slugger shoved the catcher, Luis Pujols, aside with a stiff arm, then grabbed the umpire and moved him out of the way. He was a man on a mission, and nothing was going to stop him. He got to Nolan and threw a wild, overhand punch. Ryan, for his part, tried to back up, but the two men tangled and fell to the ground in a pile of arms and legs as both benches emptied. But in the end, Nolan Ryan's hateful antics had won. Winfield had gotten ejected, and the Astros defeated the Padres. Over 3 decades later, Nolan didn't mince his words about how he felt. In fact, he didn't think he was the problem. When someone comes out to the mound, they are coming out there with the intent to hurt you, and I'm not going to be passive about it. I learned that against Dave Winfield. I decided I was going to be the aggressor. I wasn't going to just take it. Winfield, on the other hand, felt he just couldn't let the disrespect slide, and he was just taking justice into his own hands, as he told the Washington Post in a 2011 interview. I just felt like at some point you have to say, enough is enough. While Nolan Ryan got away with so many hate-fueled shenanigans, it didn't work on everybody. Batter number 3 is Pete Rose, another great player who made Nolan Ryan look as bad as a rookie pitcher despite his years of excellence. The hallmark of any good pitcher is the ability to get the better of even the best of hitters. And the same goes for hitters. The better they bat against top pitchers, the more glory they earn for themselves. So when Nolan Ryan faced off with Pete Rose, it was a classic case of an immovable object meeting an unstoppable force. Nobody wanted to yield to the other. But that's the thing about pitchers and hitters. Someone has to come out on top. And things between Pete Rose and Nolan Ryan were definitely not 50-50. Rose went up against Ryan 91 times. He collected 12 hits and drew 19 walks, while Ryan struck him out only 9 times. Rose wound up hitting about .353 against Ryan, far above his lifetime average. In many games, Rose got on base regularly against the fireballer. Nolan Ryan never outright declared his hate for Pete Rose, but rather, there were hints of jealousy in the way he would talk about Rose. He has gone on record to say that he admired and respected Rose's ability to never go down quietly. But were these really words of admiration, or words from a pitcher who had an ego too big to accept defeat? Surprisingly, Rose never gloated about his dominance over Nolan Ryan. Why this comes as a shock is that two players weren't that different when it came to showing just how passionate they were about winning and putting their opponents to shame. And in the 1980 National League Championship Series game, Rose did just that. After asking for a curveball, Pete Rose successfully got Nolan Ryan to give him what he wanted. Asking for a curveball is as good as trying to get struck out. But what Pete Rose had in store caught Nolan Ryan off guard. A line drive that barely missed Nolan's head. This wasn't just a regular old hit while at bat. This was a message to the strikeout king. Even if Ryan never publicly admitted hatred, in those numbers, in those moments, in those games, you could taste it. Despite possessing crazy antics, Nolan Ryan knew that no matter how hateful and angry he felt, Pete Rose had earned the right to make him feel that way. He was a 3-time World Series winner with a few batting titles. But how does Nolan Ryan handle things when he can get away with being disrespectful? Well, this next player shows just that. Player number 2 is Robin Ventura. Nolan Ryan couldn't stand him, so much so that he resorted to violence to express his feelings. On a hot August evening, the Chicago White Sox were facing the Texas Rangers, and 26-year-old Robin Ventura was set to bat. Little did he know he was about to experience an event he would never forget in his career, and not for the right reasons. Earlier in the game, Ventura had singled in the first inning to drive in Joey Cora, which gave the White Sox momentum. The Chicago fans were charged, and it was embarrassing for Nolan Ryan. So, in the third inning, Robin Ventura stepped up at the plate to bat again. Nolan Ryan made sure that the batter wasn't going to be ready for what was about to come his way. Ryan plunked the left-handed swinger just below the right elbow. This caught Ventura off guard. The way it hurt, the way it landed perfectly on him, Ventura knew that this was no accident. He dropped his helmet and his bat, but he didn't walk to first base. He charged the mound. But here's the thing. If Nolan Ryan did this intentionally, he knew what Ventura was going to do next. And he was ready for him. The explosion was instantaneous. Ryan, cool yet furious, locked Ventura in a headlock with his left arm. Then his right fist came up. As many as 6 punches rained down on Ventura's head before catcher Ivan Rodriguez and others dragged Ventura off. The benches cleared, chaos in cleats, poise versus fury. And Ryan, even with decades of mileage, showed he still had the ferocity, the instinct. Ventura was ejected. Manager Gene Lamont too. But Ryan? He stayed on the mound and finished 7 innings, earning the victory in a Rangers win. Then came the aftermath, the sting behind the punches. Ventura went public. If you don't think he did it on purpose, you don't know the game. He believed Ryan meant to hit him. Ryan's answer was less theatrical but just as revealing. It was just self-preservation. I was just trying to pitch him inside. You don't have time to think, you just react. He claimed he didn't intend to hit Ventura, but insisted that, once charged, he was going to defend himself. Ventura's camp was furious that Ryan wasn't ejected. His manager insisted Ryan threw punches. Ventura himself said Ryan gave me a couple of noogies on my head, but that was only part of it. For the media and fans, it was a defining moment. The old lion versus the young challenger. Ventura, 20 years younger, is charging the mound. At number 1, we have Craig Grebeck. Many people would believe that it was Robin Ventura who saw the worst of Nolan Ryan, but that honor would be reserved for his teammate Craig Grebeck. It was evident that Nolan Ryan hated young batters who were trying to be hot stuff when he was pitching, so if Ryan was going to hate anybody more than Ventura, it had to be someone younger and with a meaner swing. And Craig Grebeck had these attributes. By the time Grebeck made his debut in the league, it was 1990. Nolan had been pitching for close to 25 years, and he was more than just a veteran. He was a Hall of Famer waiting to retire. He had a World Series title, along with so many other records that seemed untouchable, such as the all-time record for no-hitters, which is 7, and the all-time record for strikeouts, sitting at a whopping 5,714. By 1990, he knew he was past his prime. It had been over a decade since he won his famous World Series title with the Mets. He wasn't chasing any titles or accolades. He was simply playing the sport he loved because he couldn't imagine doing anything else. But being in his twilight years and well past his prime didn't mean he still couldn't throw deadly pitches and strike out batters. Oh no, in fact, people believed that he had aged into fine wine. And along with his mean pitch, he still had a mean attitude. And Grebeck was going to be his next victim. On August 10th, the Texas Rangers were in Chicago to face the White Sox. Ryan, as always, was the main event. But in the bottom of the second inning, a little-known rookie named Craig Grebeck stepped into the box. Grebeck was the ultimate underdog, a 5'8", 160-pound utility man who looked more like a kid who wandered onto the field by accident than a major league slugger. You'd think this would be an easy out for the Ryan Express. You'd be wrong. With a mighty swing that defied all logic, Grebeck launched a scorching, improbable line drive. The ball soared through the night, landing over the outfield wall for his first career home run. And the young man, in a moment of pure, unbridled joy, pumped his fists as he rounded the bases. Ryan walked over to his pitching coach on the bench and, with a look of pure, cold fury, uttered a phrase that would forever become part of baseball lore. He looked at the coach and said, "I'm going to put some age on the little squirt." 1 week later, the two teams met again. The air was thick with tension. Every single person in the stadium was waiting for the inevitable moment, the little squirt against the aging Titan. Grebeck stepped into the batter's box. The first pitch came roaring in. and Ryan, true to his word, didn't throw a fastball past him. He threw it directly at him. The ball hit Graybeck in the back, a 100-mile-an-hour message sent with deadly accuracy. It broke one of his ribs. And yet, despite the bone-shattering message, the rivalry between them took an even stranger turn. Graybeck would actually end up hitting for a .273 average against Ryan throughout his career. In a way, that was his revenge. Graybeck was in no place to charge at Nolan. He was still a rookie, and facing a man who had been pitching when he was still in diapers is not a smart move. But Ryan's hate for Craig spilled onto his teammates, and many say that the Graybeck home run led to the Ventura incident. Decades later, Graybeck revealed that he was never trying to put himself in conversations with Ryan with that infamous home run. He was just told the Chicago Tribune this: "I never considered it a rivalry. All I was trying to do was get a hit. That's all I was trying to do against Nolan Ryan, against anybody. He was a tough pitcher to get a hit off of. I was just trying to get on base." Seeing that after everything, Graybeck was still the same coy, innocent rookie he was the day he hit a home run, puts into perspective just how much Nolan Ryan cared about his pride and how far he would go to settle a score. There you have it, the 5 batters that Nolan Ryan revealed he hated the most. Is there anybody you feel he took his hate too far with? Let us know all your thoughts and opinions in the comments section. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more content like this.